Let's talk about the cost of living. You know, this has been the conversation. Remember last week, City, when we were asking ourselves, when we say the cost of living has gone up, that life is hard, the economy is bad, what exactly does that mean? What is the interpretation of that
How
phrase?
do you tell that the economy is bad?
And what are you comparing it with?
Yes.
So, to have that conversation, we are joined by Annabel Njoki. She's a lawyer, she's a political analyst. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, Annabel.
Thank you, Latif, and thank you, CT, for having me. Pretty exciting to be in this hot seat.
Yeah. You occupy the hot seat of the Situation Room. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Very good. Someone tells me you're the Duchess of Kabetishire.
Yes, I love the name.
What is the Duchess of Kabetishire? What does that mean?
Well, we refer to Charles Njonjo as the Duke of Kabetishire, so I decided to make myself the Duchess. Why not?
No, why not, right? I mean, why not?
Yes.
A lot's been happening, like you just had us saying. Last week we were asking ourselves, when we say this economy is bad, things are tough, the cost of living is high, mambo ni mbaya, what exactly does it mean? From your interactions with people, from your own perspective, what does that mean?
From my interaction with people, that whole saying of the economy is bad stems from what, with the money that I earn, with the money that my business makes me on a daily, on a monthly, what are the things that I was able to purchase last month or 3 months ago that I am now not able to purchase? Am I able to buy the same, or rather the same number of packets of unga, packets that is either maize flour or wheat flour? Am I, if I was buying my children eggs, am I still able to put those eggs on the table? If I used to say pay fees, lump sum at the beginning of the year and just forget about it, am I still able to do that, or am I now having to do it termly or monthly? So it's relative from person to person depending on your situation. But the more your purchasing power decreases, I believe, the more you perceive the economy to be bad. Yes.
Is that what's happening?
Yes.
And what's the cause of this, from your perspective?
It's a myriad of issues. One fact is, as a people, or rather, do I say as from the previous government, we've had a trajectory of living beyond our means as a country. The ripple effect is that because of certain decisions our governments have made, now the people are finding themselves in a scenario where they also have to live beyond their means, or go out of their way to live beneath their means so that they're able to stretch the coin as much as possible. So when you, as a government, go and take out a loan in the name of your people who give power to you, and then do not necessarily make prudent decisions with those finances that you have taken, or you do not use them for the intended purposes, and then of course there's bound to be gaps. And it doesn't matter that there are gaps, because whoever lent you the money is just crossing off the days on their calendar. A day is coming when they'll come calling and they're like, is how city? my 10,000 bob, where is it? So currently we find ourselves in a situation where very soon our creditors are going to come calling. Like one David Ndi put it, we are either paying or we are defaulting. If we default, there's repercussions that come with that. If we pay, again, there's the repercussions
for us to
that
be able to pay.
That. Yes, and we have to put up with it, sadly. Because we also have a government which had the option to also be prudent with how it's using its finances currently, but it appears to be unwilling to do so.
What do you mean? You see, okay, let's take a step back. I want us to talk from, the citizen's perspective.
Yes.
As all these things were happening, as they were being done in our name, and supposedly for our benefit, were we aware?
I would say no.
Were we sitting back and just going about our lives and not taking a keen interest on what's happening around us? Taking a keen interest on the borrowing that was taking place, taking a keen interest on the application of the proceeds of those loans? Is it that we were just not taking a keen interest in those things?
Let me put it this way. I'll say yes and no. There's a certain percentage of our population that is aware. when these deals were being negotiated, they were aware. Some even raised, their concerns. They're like, we're not comfortable with the trajectory we're taking. But the majority of the people, and I think when we say, I look at it this way, we refer to as Kenyans, we use the term Wanjiko to refer to Kenyans. But sometimes when I look at it, it's like we have different levels of Wanjiko in terms of level of education, in terms of level of exposure, and those two things also impact how we perceive the happenings in the country and how we respond to whatever political or social issues we're facing. So, like if I were to use my ordinary Mama Mboga, no, she did not understand what exactly our government was getting her tied up in. And even as recent as yesterday, I was speaking to Wamureu, who is a lady who sells me potatoes in the market. And she did not seem to be aware that there's a fuel, increment in terms of the levy from 8% to 16%, because I was asking her, so there's what you've been incurring as transportation costs as the traders in this market to bring the potatoes from Kinakinangop and Nyandarua to where you are. So what are your transporters telling you about the coming month? And she's like, what do you mean? See, we'll just bring them in like normal. I'm like, they haven't told you about, the likelihood of an increase in the cost of fuel. And she's like, why are you asking that? And then I explained to her. So, we parliamentarians sat down, they had this discussion. We're moving from 8% to 16%. So therefore, there's a likelihood that you will not be paying that. And she was like, oh, really? So... from that context alone, this is a conversation.
So with all this conversation that's been taking place, finance bill,
even on vernacular radio stations,
everywhere. Did she know about housing fund, at least?
I didn't go that far with her.
But Bei Mafuta, she had no clue.
No. So perhaps I think it's also, we have the conversations, but are we having them in a language simple enough and basic enough for the most ordinary of ordinary Mwananchi to at least grasp the concept or to have a semblance of an understanding of what is happening?
City, are we? It's I like what you're saying, Annabel. The language in which you say it, and I'm not talking about the ethnic language. No. How do you talk to a child, for instance, who is 3 years old? Choose whichever language it is. There is a way in which you're going to communicate this message so that the child understands, because their interpretation of issues are very different from yours.
Yes.
So, in the same way, given someone's background, and now you take your pick as to what the background is, you may think you have communicated effectively simply because you've uttered the words, but the person has not understood a thing you've said because they cannot relate to what you are saying. Now, these economic discussions that people who understand economics have, most Kenyans are either not interested in it or they simply don't understand. And it's because it has not been communicated in a way that it can be understood. Now, if you look at the campaign processes of the two protagonists in the last election, both were fairly effective in the communication. Why? They simplified the messages.
Yes.
Focused and said this things that were easy to understand and relate to.
Yes.
Now, the unfortunate thing, though, is this. When you talk about policy, let's leave the Wanjiko that we like referring to and talk about this, I call it the mythical middle class.
Yes, okay? It is mythical.
Oh, you agree with me?
Yes, I agree with you.
It's very mythical, okay?
I agree with you.
Do they also understand? And if they actually understand it, how come one never hears their voices? Or are we saying that so long as somebody comments on social media, we've heard their voice?
Yeah, there's that. There's a, we call it what? There's a confidence the keyboard gives you.
Anonymity.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I don't get to disagree with you to your face.
Oh, some people do. from the things I have read, they don't only disagree with you.
No. But you see, it's on a platform as opposed to your face. Because sometimes when it's directly to your face, then you don't know how to react.
You know, the reason why I mentioned this particular forum is because when you read through it, you also get the impression that half the time what people are discussing is not what's actually going on. But the discussion appears to be discussing this.
Yes.
One group will go into history. Another one will go into the politics of the day.
Yes.
And yet the issue is the ever-increasing cost of living. So, if that isn't central to the discussion, then I have to ask the question, do they really understand the import of these things beyond what they've been told? And that's why we're asking the question to the individual. When you say that these are hard economic times, how is it affecting you for it to be hard? And if it is hard when it was simpler and better, what happened? Now, you put it very well. You said you were able to buy more with the money you had. But beyond that, because the economic terms we're talking about here goes beyond just your ability to be able to purchase more.
No, they do. But that's what I'm asking. Are we using terminology that people can relate to?
Who is we?
Because yes, you're not
Annabel,
able to.
Who is? When you say, are we using?
When I say we, I'm referring to. If it's the economists, can people understand? If it is the parliamentarians, that is both the National Assembly and Senate, are they using language that Mwananchi is understanding? As professionals, legal, engineering, accounting, otherwise, are we using terms that people understand? Do even we ourselves understand what these other people are speaking about? Because yes, it's one thing to say that I can't afford the 5 packets of unga I was buying 2 months ago. But how is it that you have ended up in that situation of not being able to afford? What exactly in this value chain process has changed to result in that final price at the shelf in your kiosk or in your supermarket? Or with your local trader, whether it's vegetables you're buying, whatever it is. How do we end up there? So it's we go back to the conversation where government has been saying, no, we're looking more at production, because once we start at that level, at the initial stages, then the end result is going to be a change in price. No problem. So you've given concessions on the farm input and what have you. And I'm just going to use the basic unga that everybody cries about, even when Azimio guys decide to call the government to order. One of the reducible minimums is unga. So you've given that farmer in Kitale their input, they farmed, the maize has come out. But now it has gone to the miller. This miller has to use machinery to process this unga for the packaging and what have you. Are they not using electricity? They are. What have we done with the fuel? We're increasing the costs. So whereas you're mitigating on costs at farm level, at this manufacturer processor level, we're not mitigating the costs. What is the end result? We are more or less going to be remaining with the same price, if not a higher price, based on the trajectory that we are taking. So
actually,
are we?
Let's just talk about the whole value chain. Because you take maize to miller. There's
transport.
Yes, there's a transportation cost.
You take finished product from miller to retailer. There's transport cost. And all these have gone
up.
Yes. So
do people understand? I'd say yes, they do. You know, understanding doesn't have to be universal. That your level of understanding, what you are, the way you're breaking it down, doesn't have to be the same. But then, I guess, for example, in the case of your Mama Mboga, it's an issue of interest. If you ask me, I think this lady has just been doing her thing. She is tunnel visioned. She is focusing on her day to day. Right? As far as she's concerned, things are difficult, things are tough. I have got to just get the thing going.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about. People in this country living despite the government. Things are happening. I know I have to feed my children tonight.
Yes.
I've got to get my supplies. I've got to make sure that Annabel comes to the market and she finds the things, the goods that she wants. That's what I'm dealing with. Now, whether there's a finance bill being discussed, whether the MPs are fighting, whether it's mafuta imepanda, now those are secondary issues. At some point, maybe when I come up to breathe, I will find out what's been happening.
Yeah.
But today, I am not finding out. But then there's somebody else in that same market who has this information like this. He'll even tell you, or she will tell you, this is what has happened. It will rise from this date. Come the 14th,
Yes.
we expect to hear the price. It'll go up. If it goes up now, this means that this person who brings us here, this truck that comes from Nyandarua with the potatoes and the cabbages, this is what's going to cost them. So we are likely to adjust our price this much. Levels of understanding. But I think conversations and whether people actually do understand what's happening and connecting and correlating it to the debt. And even when we talk about, calling our presidents, the former president, we gave him names around debt. The current president, we've come up with names around debt. People know.
They do.
People know these
They do.
things.
Because the outcome or the manifestations of what we're referring to affects everybody. It does not matter who you are.
No, it does. It does
It will
affect
affect
everybody.
you.
And I
Yes.
would even say they've also, in line as with this conversation about the high cost of living, they've also learnt harshly the impact of, climate change based on the period we've just come from. Because I was just discovering, again, still interacting with the traders, that a good chunk of the peas and potatoes that we were buying in Lower Kabete between March, April and May were actually from Tanzania.
What?
Yeah. In my market, in Lower Kabete, were actually from Tanzania.
And ordinarily, where do they come from?
Like I said, the Nyandaruas.
Same Nyandarua area.
But because of the climatic conditions we were experiencing as a country then, whatever was coming was not enough to satisfy.
So we ran out of minjis.
Yes, the demand.
My friend.
We ran out of minjis.
So that is starvation looming.
Shelled minjis in a 2 kg kasuku were going for as high as 700 shillings.
What?
Yes.
Shelled?
Yes. Ile wamekutolea kwa maganda.
Peas out of a pod.
Yes.
But no,
700 for 2 kg.
Yes.
Yes,
tin.
in a marker, because
A 2
700 is a
kg
lot of money.
kasuku of carrots had gone up to as high as 400 shillings. Because, I was looking at, there's the shopping you're used to. So we each have roles in the house.
Yeah.
This one does the supermarket shopping, this one does the vegetable shopping. So I'd come back on a normal market day and I'd wonder, where am I seeing a third of
what we normally
get, and for how long will this sustain us?
Yeah.
Mind you, we are a 2-person household. So then I have to ask myself, what becomes of the household that has 2-3 children, right? If they're approaching their teen years or in their teen years, there's also the increase in consumption that comes with that growth spurt.
Especially if they are boys.
Yes, because I remember when our house helps boys were in their teen years, and she would say, Aki Njoki sapa nowadays, I pick a whole packet of unga.
And it goes.
And it goes in one sitting. In one sitting. They're still in their teen years, but now transitioning to exit high school. But if that consumption is still what it was,
Yeah, imagine.
then I pause and ask myself, what is the reality in that household? Because it is very different from the reality in mine.
You see, you've just given the perfect analogy. This Kimbo, well, Kenyans understand. You say Kimbo Kasuku, they understand
They
it.
get what you're saying.
Yes,
Like,
it's 1 kg.
yes.
Or is it the 2 kg?
It's the 2 kg one. The 2 kg one is the big one.
The 2 kg. Now, when you say 700, it means previously it was less.
How much was it less? How much was it
It
before?
was less because unshelled in a 2 kg kasuku, we would get it for 200 shillings.
Shell.
So if they shell, let's say 350, 400 on a bad day.
So it's doubled.
doubled.
Yes.
You feel it very directly.
And why
Yep.
it's higher is because unshelled actually holds a lot more in that 2 kg kasuku as opposed to, shelled holds a lot more
Yes,
in the
it
2 kg
does.
kasuku
Yeah.
as opposed to the unshelled.
Unshelled
So you
one.
can understand the difference in price.
Yeah.
And also, they have saved you the bother of shelling it yourself.
Yes. If you're not, if you actually do not have the time
You
to
know,
do
the
that.
beauty of these things is that they're plastic, isn't it? Yes. Some of us remember a time when the containers, you're smiling, I think you know I'm going with this.
Well, the
Metallic.
tin Kimbos.
Kimbos.
The tin Kimbo.
Yes.
So
Goro was proper goro.
Yes, but what they would do with the bottom of the tin, they would knock it upwards.
Yes.
So if you want to fill it,
Reduce the depth,
I
the
think
volume.
water is not there.
Oh, so this trade practices have not started the other day.
No, they're historical.
Where people organize potatoes nicely for you at the top of the bucket. Kumbe,
And even
beneath
heat
it
it
is just a vacuum.
Yes.
Kenyans are Kenyans. Annabel Njoki, a lawyer, political analyst, is our guest this morning. She's the Duchess of Kabete. And in Kabete, things have not been good. You know, when minjis are unavailable in a Kikuyu homestead.
People are starving.
You know?
Kikuyus with minji. Like
Inseparable.
this. Like this. Minji, waru,
Carrots
carrots,
and meat. That's
and
stew.
a kanyama. A stew.
Yes.
And then now you look at Githeri.
Yeah.
You know, the green maize.
Yes.
So before it dries. It's called bebejua.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now that kagitheri of bebejua na miji. Na kewaru.
Bebe, I understand. So
Like a carrot.
So jua is what exactly?
Young. That's
The
young.
young, bebe,
Young.
young.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you mix it,
When you mix it, royalty, these ones. Royalty. You visit Annabel and she gives you that githeri of bebejua, na tomiji, na kakarati, na tuaru, na kakavish, kanyama. Complete. Now all those things have gone up. Cost of living. So you're reducing people from royalty
You know?
to making them peasants.
plebeians.
Ah,
Yani wananchi tu watu
completely huko, they're plebs. Our guest this morning, Annabel Njoki, lawyer, political analyst. We're talking about the high cost of living and the state of the economy and how things are looking like. Yes, we know things have happened at a different level. Yeah, there's a lot of borrowing. We had a lot of money that's due. And then the finance bill that's about to be signed into law by the president. And then from next week, we have a new finance act that then looks at how to raise more money and taxes going up in some areas, taxes reducing in some areas. But in many areas that affect you directly, then things are going to be changing. And we were talking about whether people actually can connect all those things with everything that's happened in the country over years. And if then we do, are we keen enough with what's happening now at government level? And knowing that how it shall affect us down the road.
Eric, let me ask this question.
Ask, please.
If the last elections that we had were not fraught and were not submerged in so many promises, and if indeed the one candidate who seemed to speak directly to the people and their plight actually won, would the expectations have been as high as they are? Because a lot of the disappointment that I see in my mind has to do with the expectations. That's one. Two, it isn't the first time that the prices of commodities have gone up in this country. There have been times they haven't just gone up, the commodities haven't been there. Now, we're not saying they're not there. They're actually there. Maybe not in as the quantity you'd like, but they're there. You may not buy as many packets of sugar as you may like, but you can buy. I'm simply saying, in times when the quantity of food itself was scarce, the prices were high. We've had those situations. Here, we have high prices going higher, but the food actually exists. Now we're arguing that if we tackle this matter at the production level, planting level, if it's agricultural product, it will be less. And yet when you get granular on it and you look at the processes that particular food substance takes before it gets to your table in the form of ugali, the cost won't really have gone down. Not really. Now, the question is, are we expecting too much from this government? Their promises notwithstanding.
Is it?
Are we being unrealistic?
Yes. In
With
our
our
expectations.
expectations?
Yes.
I'd say promises were made, yes. But I think this is Annabel speaking. I will not speak for City Latif or anybody else. There was no day, especially any promise to do with agriculture was going to be realized in a month or two. Because if you just even factor the natural process from planting to maturity and harvesting, it's not fitting within that period. The other thing also is we interact with politicians' campaign material, but I am not so sure just how keen we are to internalize it. And I'd like to just deviate a bit and use the housing levy example. You read the Kenya Kwanza plan, and within the first 5 pages of that document, there's a whole analogy case study kind of example talking about housing.
Yeah.
Housing that, if you look at that analogy, reflects more or less what it is they're trying to do right now with this housing levy plan. So, is it that they hoodwinked us? No, it was there.
They said it.
In writing, it's there. Publication, you can get it from the UDA website. So it's a question of, yes, perhaps we do need to manage our expectations. I am hesitant to say that we're expecting too much, because there's nothing I believe that has ever been promised in this country by a politician that could not be delivered. I believe what we lack is purely political goodwill, and perhaps a semblance of lack of proper planning, or there's proper planning, but the guys who do it are not listened to, or their ideas are brushed aside or just rewritten and redesigned when the politicking comes into the mix. Yes. Because if it's planning, it's done.
But then from what City is asking, from the citizens' perspective, so fine, the campaign happened,
Yes.
the promises were made
Yes.
at some, depending on what crowds and what was being amplified. The issue of housing was discussed at some place. The issue of food and food production was discussed at some place. Supporting of farmers, supporting of business people at whatever levels. All these things took place. Are we being unrealistic with the expectation that the government will deliver? Did we take everything and see, okay, there were too many expectations, but we believed everything, and we believed that everything would happen all at once?
There's a level of unrealism in our expectations. But when you as a leader have also opened your mouth and said, I am going to work on Road X within the next 2 months, I am going to ensure we have industry Y within the next 6 months, you understand, or at the back of your mind, especially having been in government previously, you know what processes and procedures you have to go through. So you actually know whether or not
Those
it is
months
doable.
are possible.
Yes, you do know whether it is doable. When you make that promise, and then you want to come back and get upset with Annabel because Annabel is like, but why am I not seeing industry? Why? Ata Mjachimba Foundation. And why am I not seeing Road X? And we are 1.5 months in. You said 2 months, we're 1.5 months in. And then you want to ask me, or rather you want to tell me, but 1, 2, 3 needed to be done. So why can't you look at it this way? No, because you knew 1, 2, 3 needed to be done. You should have, from the minute you made your utterances, should have started managing my expectations at that point.
Yeah.
So the best thing would have been, Road X will be worked on. Please do not give timelines if you have no intention of honoring those timelines. But again, from a political perspective, what is a campaign? A campaign is basically telling a story. Now, this is how I normally explain it to people. It's basically telling a story. Whoever ends up winning at the end of the day is either, one, the person who told the best story, or number 2, the person who may not necessarily have had the best story, but they told it in the best way, in the way that people just resonated with and they felt it is this person and it can be nobody else. So a story was told. And people fell in love with the story that they fell in love with, and they went to the ballot and they chose who they chose. Post the fact, has there been more storytelling? Yes, there has been. But now, the difference between storytelling post the fact and before the fact is, post the fact, you have been handed the instruments of power.
you are the one to
So
actually
as
deliver.
far as the voters are concerned, you have everything you need at your disposal to deliver on the promises you made. So when you fail to, or when your utterances create the perception that you are likely to fail to deliver, then they have to ask themselves, is it that you do not have enough machinery and skills at your disposal, or are you fundamentally lacking in something that is becoming a hindrance towards you delivering on your
Something
promises?
like competence.
So now that is your words, not mine. So now that is the conversation you're finding amongst Kenyans.
So that tells you the fact that people can actually point out to the promise and the reality of you delivering or not delivering.
Yes.
Tells you that people understand.
Yes.
When people interacted with you at the campaigns, they understood what you were saying. And they were very keen with what you were saying. That's why they come back and now, okay, so we expected that this road is going to be done. So what now? Na pia kiongozi wenu amesimama amesema, na mimi nasema hii barabara inatoka hapa Karamenda, inaenda inapitia Karamenene, inaingia Karanyonyo, inafika mpaka Karojaja. Kufikia mwezi wa 9, hiyo barabara tutajenga.
Yote itakuwa na lami.
People take that. Now, as you're saying, that mwezi wa 9 is just...
Yeah. But it also comes down to transparency and access to information. For the longest time, and this is why we have the requirement of public participation in our constitution, for the longest time, government used to operate like, I don't know, some boogeyman. There was a lot of things being done shrouded in secrecy. I understand that sometimes for a political leader, you may not want people to be too privy to the happenings because it works to your advantage in a certain way. But in the era we're living in, more often than not, it works to your disadvantage. Because if this person does not understand that this is where we will start, okay, this is where I start as your member of parliament. I come to you, you tell me, we need Market X constructed, we need that constructed. Okay, so I have to identify if it's a road, am I working with Kura or am I working with Kenha? And then I have to go to them and find out, okay, so what budgetary allocation do they have for construction of roads for this financial year? Of that budgetary allocation they have, how many kilometers of road are they looking to do? Of those kilometers of road, how many are in Kiambu County? Then from the allocation for Kiambu County, how many can I get in Kabete constituency? How long does that entire conversation take? How long does it take to get the approvals? If you're not willing to come back to your people and tell them that, hey, I promised you this road. These are the steps I have taken. This is the feedback I have received from the respective government entity. These are the timelines we're looking at. If you do not come back with that information, then you have nobody to blame but yourself. When you go to the market or you go for a church service and they start heckling you, you cannot hate them because you made a promise. They had an expectation. You're the one who failed to come and communicate that, guys, yes.
But also, if you become truthful, Annabel,
and you're Kuko.
Same. You come back and tell them, I've gone to Kenya and I've realized. No, I've come to Kura. I've realized they actually did not have sufficient budget for Kiambu County. So not much really can be allocated even to Kabete constituency. And now this is an issue. We have to wait until the next year. I'm going to lobby so that in the next year they have a budgetary allocation that we are going to. So when are we expecting our road? Now it's about 2 years that people will look at you and this one.
But also, if you're a good politician,
the other MP went with the president or went with Rigiji to a church service and they started doing the road. This guy of ours is giving us books.
Something situated to say as a politician.
This story, it's not a competence issue I want to speak on. I have a group of leaders who I am convinced, every time I look at their non-performance and we blame them, I say it is not their fault. They are not competent to do the jobs they have. So, we should go easy on them. That's most of our governors, in short. Now, what I wanted to talk about was propaganda and how it trumps development records time and time again. The person who seems to move from state to state is a good propagandist. You're talking about the promise he made for the road and he doesn't have the money. He doesn't just tell you that, but he offers you something else. As we're waiting for this, this is what we can do. So people feel it's not as though all is lost.
There's
At least something
working.
is happening.
Yes.
So you always need to identify your low-hanging fruits. What are the ones we can implement quick, fast?
Yes.
Once you identify those ones, at least it gives them a bit more grace
But also,
to be
Eric,
patient with you.
That basically is hoodwinking. It's a smokes and
yes,
mirrors.
it is outright. It's mischievous.
I know. The
Yes.
promise was a road, and I'm here. I'm coming to do border shed.
Yes.
As we wait for the road.
But Eric, on this matter of truth speaking, there are political leaders who have gone over time, have gotten their electorate used to them speaking the truth without embellishing it, and people have gotten used to it.
Yes.
So when they say a certain thing, people say, okay, we've heard you because we know how you speak and you're speaking the truth. So the others will answer, what then can we do? There are individuals, unfortunately there are few, but they exist. People who don't mollycoddle what they're saying. And their people have gotten used to it, and that is what their people like them for. Okay? But the storytellers, yes, they have their day. But in this day and age, it isn't long in coming. Because your storytelling, there'll be a better storyteller than you. And the storytelling will be based on your failures.
Yes. In fact, they'll easily play with that.
That's,
And
but that's how they're going. Yes.
That's also the advantage also of social media. People use it to hold their governors and basically their elected representatives to account. So some of the groups we have as Kabete, I always see a blogger posts on behalf of their politician, and then you're met with a question. But wait, the governor told us this was the plan for feeding children in schools.
Bas.
That he was going to start a project where traders within the county would be supplied with chicken. Mwanza ama munapatiwa,
Mayai.
what do you call it? Economic stimulant packages. Mweze kufuga kuku. And then your eggs are what will be used to supply the schools. So it's sort of like one feeding into it's a symbiotic relationship of sorts.
Right.
So they send a very beautiful poster talking about that, and then they are met with a question. So, as of today, in my ward, how many homesteads have you supplied with chicks? When do we expect to start hearing that this number of trays was supplied to the primary school within my locality? It works. These platforms also work.
It helps to hold the people accountable.
Yes.
But also to remind everybody of what the promises were and tracking
of
the process.
Yes.
So it's working.
It is working. The system we're in is never perfect.
This person who posted on behalf of the politician, what do they respond? Do they say, I'll come back to you, or do they just take off?
Silent.
Sometimes, if they really have nothing to say, they go silent. Others, when they feel cornered, will become abusive. Others will say, no, we have started on this side of the county, but we are coming that side. The ones who are in the know will actually just detail it and give reasons why they haven't gotten there yet. But sadly, the ones in the know actually account for a very small percentage.
Is it that the ones in the know or the ones who dare speak the truth? Because, here's the thing.
Perhaps a little of both.
Or both?
Yeah, perhaps a little of both.
So there are people who are speaking on behalf of this political leader.
Yes.
And they actually don't know.
Yes. Because you're a blogger. Your work is just to hype the guy every day so that you make sure people don't forget about him. As long as you made your 1,000, 2,000 for the day, you're happy.
So the politician has just basically had the blogger to just keep my name alive.
In those spaces so that people don't forget.
In those spaces, whether they are insulting me or not, just make sure they're talking about Annabel.
Yes.
That's a good one. It's a good strategy as well.
It works. It works. But now it's just... But now going back still to, cost of living, and I gave the analogy of my household vis-a-vis the other household, we also need to take into context the realities in what were previously referred to as the marginalized counties. Nowadays, we've transitioned from just marginalized areas because at some point the area government realized even in a poor county, you will still have a region that is doing better than others. So now we refer to marginalized areas. And last month, I was consulting on a project that had us, transitioning or moving through 6 counties. And I remember basically what we were doing was public participation. And when we were in Lodwar, we found that we had a lower turnout than anticipated. And when we got to talking with the people, they're saying, hey, listen, please understand that the geographical realities of Turkana County are not the same as Kiambu County. Here, our villages
are miles apart.
So
Yes.
there's somebody who would have loved to be here, but the village is 300 kilometers away. Now, because of the cost that is added onto the fuel as it is being transported there, you find even their public transport system is not as good as even in Laikipia.
It's struggling.
Yes. So you find that the cost that a resident would have to incur to attend a public participation session from that village that is 300 kilometers away could come to easily 12,000 shillings. Why? For them to travel from there to Lodwar, they're charged 3,000. The trip back is 3,000. That's 6,000 shillings. If the public participation sessions run to the evening, obviously they cannot go home. So that means taking accommodation in town. Where are they getting this money? So even as we're having the conversation about the high cost of living, my context and my reality is as a resident of Kiambu County. But what is the reality of the resident in Turkana, in Mandera, in Wajir? So we really, really need to take the conversations about equity seriously. How much more do we need to do for that person so that they can come to the general level that the rest of the country is at? Yeah.
That's true. And also because that public participation ought to have gone closer to them, not them coming all the way 300 kilometers to participate. And the reason why the people are not taking it there is because, okay, so if we do 300 kilometers and go and find a village and then maybe we engage with 50 people, then we have to go another 250, engage with 39 people. We have to go cross another. It's better if we just add 50 plus 39, we bring them to Lodwar, ask them to come to Lodwar. You end up with 15 people.
Not necessarily.
Anyway, who have not come
in this context, they were actually willing to go the distance, but budgetary constraints.
You know.
So now you have to, it really makes you now go back to the drawing board and ask yourself very many questions, because this was a first time experience. So now they're like, okay, so now moving forward, as we are budgeting, if ever we're having an activity like this, then now we know we have to.
Can I ask you a question?
But I say, for me, the learning point was just that the equity conversation just doesn't stem across certain facets.
Yeah.
Face-to-face meetings work wonders.
They
do. We're running out of time. But when you talk of public participation, if one hears a message, a conversation through the radio, it is still participation. Yes.
Yes.
Because they have heard. Now, you may ask, but can they call in? Those 300 kilometer away villages, do they have phones? Chances are one or two people have a phone. I'm just trying to say, this is the thing out of the box situation, where physical meetings may be an impossibility.
True.
But it doesn't mean you cannot reach them.
You can do, say, bulk SMS.
Yes.
Yes.
You can. So there are all these things that one can do. And even those with these rising costs are going to become difficult. Because someone is going to weigh between going to look for food and attending a baraza.
A baraza?
Yes.
That will cost him 12,000 bob.
Yes.
But that is why Kenyans are also now, you know how they ask for handouts during campaigns? That is why now politicians are also going to have it very hard, or even government in general is going to have it very hard conducting those sessions, because citizens have now gotten to the place where they ask you to pay them to attend those barazas.
Yes.
Because I am going to be stopping my business for the day.
Yeah, but they're mirroring exactly what our elected leaders do. They are paid
to attend parliament.
To go to parliament.
Not parliament, those sittings that they have,
committee meetings.
They are paid. So when you want the wananchi to attend a committee public participation baraza, they want to be paid.
So unfortunately now it skews even the public participation.
Yes, it
Because
does.
as a politician, if I'm going to pay, I'm going to pay the people who are friendly to me.
Yes.
People who are going to come and say yes, yes, yes to everything that I was bringing to them.
You're even
Not
actually
even
going to
listening to them.
circulate notice to the regions that you know are friendly to you.
Yep.
So
And
the people
select
who
the
will not
people who
even
come.
know that there was ever an engagement with their representative.
And in the books, public participation happened.
Yes.
Annabel, thank you very much for joining us today. Come again soon.
Thank you.
Asante sana. Annabel Njoki is a lawyer. She's a political analyst. She's been our guest this hour. She's the Duchess of Kabetishire. She's given us her perspectives on very many issues on the cost of living and what it means. Keep it here for more conversations.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.